playing host to world heads of state and facing global outrage over the kidnapping of more than 200 teenage girls. Is Nigeria's image as a country that has come of age under threat? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mike Hanna. Its growing international credentials look impressive. Nigeria has laid claim to the title of Africa's largest economy, and the continent's most populous nation is taking center stage hosting the World Economic Forum. But a deepening campaign of violence by the armed group Boko Haram is continuing to threaten security and stability. The Nigerian government has come under increased pressure over its response to the abduction of hundreds of schoolgirls by Boko Haram. It's more than 3 weeks since they were taken.
Just because I took some little girls in Western education, everybody's making noise. Let me tell you, I took the girls. Girls should go and get married. We're against Western education, and I say stop Western education. I repeat, I took the girls, and I'll sell them off. There's a market for selling girls.
Well, Nigeria's president says he believes the country is winning what he called a war on terrorism, and he welcomed heads of state and business executives to the World Economic Forum.
Let me appreciate you individually and collectively for your support for us, your sentiments, and in fact, by your presence here in Nigeria at this time, you have already supported us to win the war against terror. If you had refused to come because of fear, the terrorists would have jubilated and even would have committed more havoc. But you are coming here to support us morally. It's a major blow on the terrorists. I believe that the kidnap of these girls will be the beginning of end of terror in Nigeria.
But how could the mass kidnapping of schoolgirls have taken place in a country that prides itself as a sovereign state? To discuss this, let's bring in our guests. In Brussels, we have Ademola Abbas, Head of Peace and Security at the United Nations University in Belgium. And in London, we're joined by Jonathan Offei-Ansah, publisher of Africa Briefing, a pan-African news magazine. Welcome to you both. Let's begin in Brussels with Dr. Ademola Abbas. How great a threat is this abduction to the image of Nigeria?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and I don't think there is any doubt that it is a very serious threat to Nigeria, what has happened in the last 3 weeks, especially because this will be the first time, not the first time girls have been abducted in Nigeria, but in this heinous manner, and in which the Boko Haram sect actually went on the air and threatened to sell the girls into slavery. This is devastating, to say the least. It is traumatic to the country as a whole, and I don't think we can overemphasize the impact of this event on the Nigerian society.
Well, Jonathan Offei-Ansah, as we heard, it's a hideous crime, but the question underlying it that needs to be asked is how can Boko Haram act with such apparent impunity? 3 weeks, as we keep on saying, since this abduction has taken place, and every day that passes appears to emphasize the fact that the Nigerian government has lost control of parts of the north. Your view?
You see, Boko Haram as a group, is basically anti-Western and abhors, the practice of Western education, in that part of Nigeria. So especially Western education for girls. So the action they took 3 weeks ago in abducting those 200 plus school children was a statement of intent by the group to show to the Nigerian government and to the wider world that they will carry out, their aim of disrupting any normal Western-related activity, in that part of the country. And again, ever since Boko Haram began its insurgency since 2009, thereabouts, the government of Nigeria has viewed it as a terrorist group, and it's tried to counter the activities, militarily. But Boko Haram's grievances, are more than that. They are not just they go deeper than just mere terrorism. They want to institute Sharia law and create an Islamic state, within that part of Nigeria. So the approach by Nigeria is a bit, by the Nigerian government, is a bit misplaced, because they need to engage them and then get to the root cause of the problems to try and mitigate the situation.
Well, Ademola Abbas, part of the root cause of the problem would appear to be the marginalization that many in the north of Nigeria claim from the government itself. This, some have argued, has been a fertile field for Boko Haram to continue operating with impunity, to recruit as well. I mean, as we heard Jonathan mention there, back in 2009, there was a massive military operation against them. The then leader was killed while being arrested, and yet there they still are, continuing these crimes. The abduction is just one. In the last few days, as many as 300 people killed in a village in the same area. But there do seem to be deeper roots accounting for the growth and continue flourishing of Boko Haram.
If you recall, first let me start by quickly responding or adding a bit to your last question to my colleague about why Boko Haram felt that they could do this with impunity. Basically we're talking about a country that the administration of justice is extremely corrupt, as many things in Nigeria. And when you operate in a very corrupt society, as Nigeria is, the first tendency is that whatever you do, you can easily pay your way through the judicial system or through whatever level of executive is going to be interested in it. And also when you have a government that has not really shown a great concern, but on the other hand has shown almost utmost contempt for its own people, then obviously you give a free rein to whatever groups have grievances in Nigeria. Now, back to the question of the issue of marginalization of northern youths, or northerners, as you put it. You recall that I had an interview, this inside story with Al Jazeera sometime, I think about a year ago, on the same issue. And it is quite disturbing to pin one of the root causes of Boko Haram insurgency in Nigeria on the so-called marginalization of the North. If you ask yourself, for almost 40 years of Nigeria's independence, most leaders from Nigeria actually are from the North. And so the first question is about marginalization. Who marginalized who? And secondly, I do not think the question, there's no doubt about the fact that the North is today a bit, lags a bit behind in terms of education than the rest of the country. But I don't think that any part of the country can be blamed for that, given the fact that everybody was exposed to the same level of opportunities in the country. So I wouldn't necessarily think it has to do with the so-called marginalization of the North. But that does not waste the argument that there is more to be done to address the insurgency of Boko Haram. By the way, we haven't seen Boko Haram in the southern part of the country. Does not mean that there are no insurgencies going on in the southern part of the country. I do think, seriously, the government needs to wake up. We have a government that sleeps through this crisis. We had an opportunity in 2009 when the Boko Haram leader was captured and was executed. And I gave an interview during that time to Al Jazeera that the government of Nigeria cannot involve or engage itself in extrajudicial killings of Boko Haram. Yes, I know what they are doing is reprehensible. We all know that it is despicable. We don't like what Boko Haram is doing in the country. But we cannot, go down the lane of actually doing precisely what Boko Haram is doing, and that is taking people's lives in cold blood without the judicial process. We need to have a different strategy in engaging Boko Haram. For instance, nobody is talking about de-radicalization in Nigeria today. You know, we're talking about lack of education, we're talking about poverty. Look, there is youth bulge across Nigeria as a country. There are as many unemployed youth in the north as you have in the southern part of Nigeria. If you talk about unemployment, we have in the southern part of Nigeria. Why haven't we seen this kind of insurgency in the country? So we have to talk, and for crying so loud, we do have a great number of Muslims in the southern part of the country as Christians, just as in the north. So all these permutations, to my mind, do not explain the real causes of Boko Haram insurgency in Nigeria.
There are
So we
some
can talk
points
about
there.
1 million root causes.
Apologies for interrupting you, Ademola. There are some points that we will return to, but I saw Jonathan Offei-Ansah nodding in agreement with the point that you were making about marginalization is actually a wrong way to look at it. What is your view on that, Jonathan? Do you agree with Ademola that the whole issue of the North being marginalized is actually, in a way, a red herring?
The political terrain in northern Nigeria has been largely dominated by the Muslim elite, you know, who have enriched themselves to the detriment of the ordinary mass of the people. Okay, but let me go back and say that the grievances of Boko Haram, you know, are not as material, you know, based on material well-being as we had in the Niger Delta, but it's more of religious and also societal norms. So, like I said earlier, you know, they see Western education as a sin, and even in the colonial days, they resented, abhorred, right, the imposition of a Western way of life in that part of the country. So this is, I believe, you know, is part of the roots of the cause of the problem. So Boko Haram itself is not, you know, a cause, but it's an effect, you see, of what, you know, has happened from the colonial times till the present day. Okay, so the government, like I said earlier, the government was trying to adopt, you know, the military solution because it thought Boko Haram, was a terrorist group. But it goes beyond that. The causes or the grievances of Boko Haram, you know, are not, like I said, are not just material like in the Niger Delta, but religious and societal.
Well, let's just pause at that point and remind ourselves of this event. Al Jazeera was the first international media organization to visit Chibok, where the girls were abducted. Ahmed Idris sent this report.
A traumatized mother, Esther still hasn't come to terms with the abduction of her 15-year-old daughter. She still thinks it's a bad dream she'll wake from. Her daughter is among the over 270 girls taken by Boko Haram fighters. More than 3 weeks on, they remain missing.
I prefer, if they will ask my suggestion, they should go into my house, burn my house, break everything inside my house. If they give me my daughter, that will be better for me than taking my daughter. Even they take my life at that moment, I think I'm satisfied more than when they take my daughter away. Honestly, I'm not happy at all. I just feel like killing myself.
Her pain is shared by most of the families in this once vibrant community. For them, life will never be the same. Homes and government offices were set on fire by the attackers. But the sharpest pain inflicted on Chibok and its people was here, at the girls' secondary school.
A month ago, this school was full of life. Hundreds of girls here were looking forward to fulfilling their dreams. And now it lies in ruins, and the girls are all gone.
The attackers came just before midnight and bundled more than 300 girls onto trucks before taking them into the forest. 53 of them escaped. The news that help from some foreign powers is on the way is reassuring, but the scars of the April 14 tragedy are deep and the trauma long-lasting. Ahmed Idris, Al Jazeera, Chibok, northeastern Nigeria.
Well, we heard reference to the military solution. I want to return, Ademola Abbas, to the point that you made a short while ago. 2009, military operation in that particular area the leader of Boko Haram was executed, as you said. Now, within Parliament and the government itself at the time was very critical of the military officers who conducted that operation. And in fact, there was very strong censure from the central government about what they saw as the illegality and the extrajudicial killings that took place in that particular point. Is there a way, is there a possibility that the military, the security forces are being hamstrung by playing by rules that Boko Haram do not?
Thank you very much. Well, if we say the military, are being hamstrung by the rules that the Boko Haram are not, don't forget that the military is a creation of the state, is part of the state of Nigeria, like any country. Boko Haram is not a state in Nigeria, so they don't have to play by the rules that the military, like the executive or judiciary, will play by. You can hold members of the military accountable to the domestic laws of Nigeria in a way you cannot necessarily hold Boko Haram, sect or any sect for that matter, which is a terrorist group, accountable. But let me go back to what you just said about the government, the central government of Nigeria being appalled when the leader of Boko Haram was killed in 2009. I don't necessarily share that view. I mean, I'm not talking about playing to the gallery or the government paying lip service. The first question we ask ourselves is, those who executed the Boko Haram leader, were they ever apprehended? Were they ever brought to justice? These are fundamental questions. Don't let's forget one thing. Boko Haram comprises people who live in Nigeria, who sleep and wake up with most of us, even if we cannot identify them, except when they come out as they did a couple of days ago, on prime television. They watch televisions. They see the levity with which our government treats people's lives in Nigeria. Let us ask ourselves a question. Why should I believe a government that it has taken the president almost 3 weeks to come out publicly to speak about the adoption for the first time? And that was only simply because international pressure began to build. I mean, I'm sorry to ask, what kind of response is that from our government? That is utmost contempt. And to be ridiculous about it, if you are a Boko Haram member and you went and detonated bomb in an Abuja motor park, and the response of the government was to be gallivanting all over the country in the name of elections, you will feel insulted as Boko Haram, and you want to do even more dastardly things to grab international attention. Well, how many more lives should be taken in cold blood?
Well, Jonathan, Offei-Ansah, if I may go to you on that particular point, why was the government so slow in, as we heard there, making a formal response to these appalling abductions?
I think any can I say, responsible government should have hit the ground running. Immediately these abductions were reported. So the inaction or the slow response or the delayed response by the government in itself is an indictment, right, of its inability to handle the growing menace posed by Boko Haram in the present day.
Well, let's just take a look at the reactions not only of the government but the international community, because the international community was also slow to respond to the kidnapping in Nigeria. The girls were abducted on April the 14th. An online campaign did slowly gain traction. Hashtag Bring Back Our Girls has now been tweeted more than 1 million times. It's been picked up by people around the world, including many famous faces. Pakistani schoolgirl Malala Yousafzai, who was shot by the Taliban, has added her support. And US First Lady Michelle Obama is among politicians who are starting to take notice. Now, Ademola Abbas, you mentioned there the fact that the government has been slow, that it has only been reacting because of international pressure being exerted on it and because of things like this international campaign. Now, this is a government that at this very moment is asking for more investment in Nigeria at the World Economic Forum. It is asking it at a time when, A, it has acted slowly in this particular case, and secondly, there are indications that it does not have full control of parts of its country. Is this something that is easy or hard to explain?
I mean, it depends on how you look at it. By coming down on Nigerian government's rather sluggish reaction to this, one I am not by any stretch of my imagination vindicating the international community's own slow response. I mean, to put it bluntly, we still keep on, I mean, the response that we've witnessed so far in the disappearance of the Malaysian airline or in the ferry disaster in South Korea last month, I mean, these were events that makes our heart bleed. Do not get me wrong. But then how then do we explain that we are still pouring millions of dollars probably combing the Atlantic Oceans or the Indian Ocean looking for debris of plane? Are we prioritizing that one over the lives of 230 or nearly 300 girls who went missing in Nigeria? Now, I am not going to go down the road of trying to explain the international community's reaction. Some people have alleged so many reasons, but I don't think that is the point. The most important thing here is that if you are a country's president, as Jonathan Goodluck is, and what happened on April 14 in Nigeria happened in your country, and you did not deem it fit to come out and make a strong statement against Boko Haram and call for help when you cannot, on your own, undertake these activities, you can hardly turn around and blame the international community for their own sluggish response. And thankfully, President Obama came out yesterday and said, actually, they had been engaging with Nigerian government to try to offer them assistance, but they met rebuff from the Nigerian government. I mean, that is not very hard to believe, to be honest with you, because we know our government very well. We know they would have spent time gallivanting around political campaigns. I think at the bottom of it is that the government does not really take Nigerians' lives seriously. And if you do not take, the life of your citizens seriously, you cannot turn around and blame the international community. Let me remind you, Nigerians forget a lot and quite easily. When this government took over power, the very first statement the president made was that he didn't give a damn about the Nigerian constitution. I was horrified, not just as an international lawyer, but as a Nigerian. The president had just sworn to defend the constitution, just turned around and said he didn't give a damn on the question of whether he wanted to declare his assets when he took over. Yesterday or 2 days ago, we witnessed the entirety of Thailand's government collapse because the president in that country and 9 cabinet ministers had done things that were unconstitutional. So it's a question of constitutionality. It's a question of governance. It's a question of what democracy actually means to these people. Now, if you are an investor and you want to come and bring your money to Nigeria, you will have to think twice. The same government that has been so sluggish in responding to the kidnapping of 300 girls now did not bat an eyelid in terms of putting almost 6,000 soldiers on ground in Abuja to safeguard international dignitaries who are coming. It's about money. It's about investment.
Well,
so it doesn't matter whether
if I may, Ademola, go to Jonathan Offei-Ansah on that. You stated very, very strongly there that this is a government that appears not to care about its citizens. And this is the issue that investors should be very wary of. What's your particular view?
In my view, I think the investors, look, Nigeria recently rebased its economy to become the biggest economy in the whole of Africa and number 26 globally. Nigeria has a population of 174 million people. It's a very huge market. It has huge mineral and other oil and other mineral resources. Okay, it has a growing middle class. The median age, in Nigeria, of the population, it's about 20 years. So the average businessman will always, look at the bottom line. Will always look at where he will get the most returns on his investments. And we shouldn't forget that these activities by Boko Haram, it's largely concentrated, in the northeastern part of the country. I mean, large parts of Nigeria, like the south and the other places, are quite safe for the time being. So I don't believe this would deter the international investor, the international businessman from putting his money into Nigeria. And it is evidenced by the large attendance at the current World Economic Forum in Africa in Abuja.
Well, at that particular point, my thanks to our guests, Dr. Ademola Abbas and Jonathan Offei-Ansah. And remember as well that some 300 girls are living in fear and terror. And do let us know your thoughts. Leave your comments at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And on Twitter, go to @AJ Inside Story. I'm Mike Hanna. Thanks for watching, and goodbye for now.